On Somalia, we repeat the same practice. This is the U.S. government waits for a crisis and then reacts. And then we try to impose top-down solutions without thinking of more traditional comprehensive solutions. Now, those comprehensive solutions are not very easy. They're vying for desperate attention and resources with the other agenda, and that agenda gets very crowded. So we end up waiting for a crisis. We then once again try a top-down solution without thinking of how do we reduce the problem set, because where's the piracy coming from? What are the roots of the piracy? What are the roots of violence, political violence and conflict in Somalia? Why is it just been voted the worst state on the planet? It is a failed state, a classic case of it, and yet you can reduce the problem of Somalia. You can think about the Puntland and Somaliland as more stable, possibly governable areas. So you reduce the geographic area, and if you can think about sustaining the maritime commons with an international regime, it's right now a de facto regime, it's cooperation. The Chinese were looking at only Chinese ships and so on, but nonetheless, there's growing cooperation. But you have to persist, not just when the pirates are attacking, but after the lull, when they start attacking again. Unfortunately, it's a vast sea, and it's a vast coastline where pirates can strike, and they have more technological capability to get out beyond the shore and create problems. But if we're going to have a lasting solution, it's going to take a more comprehensive stabilization of the Somali state. So where are the resources, where's the political will, how much can we do as external powers at all? Can we think of a bottom-up and a top-down approach? Because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take both of those, and it's going to take time. You have to build institutions. I mean, you're absolutely right. You have to have water, electricity, and so on. But if you're going to sustain the security in any geographical area to make sure the water stays on, or the electricity stays on, you're going to be building an institution unless you're going to be there permanently stationed. An institution building is not something you can just plop down and provide. It is something that has to be grown up and adjusted to, and that's going to take time. And it's that time frame that we don't have time for in Washington. Right? It's the time frame of AID versus the Pentagon. It's the time frame of the National Security Council versus the development world. And those are constantly in clash. And so how do we take this long, broad perspective? How do we infuse our secular policy decisions, rule-based systems, even with a moral imperative, even in it has to be, I take Connie's point as very important, that believe me, if you allow religion to seep into our policy directly, you may regret what you wished for, because it may not be yours. And that's why the United States was set up the way it was, to try to provide, and Anne-Marie Slaughter has written very eloquently about this, she's now the Director of Policy Planning, very eloquently about trying to tap the values, American values. It's very important to be true to those values, but not to impose, and not to impose yours alone on the process, to have a rules-based system, and that's ultimately what we're trying to build. So we want freedom of religion. We don't want our religion projected onto everybody else.